Welcome back, Agent. I'm glad to see that you're still alive. Well, the board of directors has sent me down your next assignment. It contains an audio log that you should listen to so that you have the utmost of information on your next subject. Remember to be safe out there. Here at Corporate Horror, we pride ourselves on not only our safety, but our integrity. Hey everyone, this is my first piece of original work that's going to be featured on the channel of Corporate Horror, so make sure you give it some love, share, like, and of course, as always, subscribe.
The sea air and the soft calm breeze. It really isn't easy to complain about being a bodyguard on a yacht. Forget about being assigned to a divorced woman in her late 30s, throwing a party on her newly acquired ship with some of Panama's youngest and dumbest. The party is basically an excuse to get paid to enjoy a little blow and get wasted on the tan, oiled up drunken woman. All I seem to be able to do is sit here and have a steady glass of whiskey in my hand. I know what you're thinking, a bodyguard that has a drinking problem? That's a cliche. Trust me, I feel the buzz and I can definitely feel it, and my vision absolutely gets blurry, but I can shoot as straight, tipped on sauce as I can dry as a desert. My partner Pablo doesn't really seem to take the job any more seriously than I do. He takes a shot of tequila every other hour, not as bad as me, and he makes a joke every 15 minutes about how much brown liquid I can chug down my late 40s throat. He isn't that bad of a guy. I think my biggest problem with him is the fact that he helped me get this job in the first place. I was happily drinking my life away 6 years ago when Pablo walks into my bar in Boston. He tells me that I can make more money protecting trust fund kids on a red carpet parties and rich CEOs to their golf courses and bang slutty bridesmaids at a 7-figure wedding. Pablo heard about me from my years at the cop. I was no one's golden boy, but there were so many cases closed under me that I gave birth to an illegitimate love child named alcoholism. My name is Alex. I know it's an uneventful name. Everyone just refers to me by my last name, Bryant. I have been called for 20 years on the force, and it is all I respond to now. Someone calls me Alex, and I don't even recognize it. I'm not trying to be an asshole, I just forget my name is Alex sometimes. The drinking doesn't help, and it only gets blurrier, harder.
Hey brother, what are you drinking? Long Island iced tea?
Bourbon. I don't mix drinks.
Yeah, at least none on the job.
Yeah, something like that. Like I said, Pablo wasn't a bad guy. He joked a lot and had a lot of great stories. He was colorful and I was good with a gun. The wedding and the night parties have always been a little bit more fun knowing him at the job. So where is Daphne? I want to at least pretend I'm doing my job and know where the woman I'm supposed to protect is.
Don't worry, she's over there at the main deck. See her, the red top?
You call that a top? It can barely cover up what should be legal to show off in these waters.
You want to see more? She won't care if you ask from the other side of that whiskey glass. She's been using as much cocaine and drinking as many mojitos as the 19-year-olds on this yacht.
It's bourbon, and no thank you. My liver is so far on its way out, I think I'm only good for one good shot, and I want it to come out of my gun instead of anywhere else.
Alright. Hey, I'm on my way to find a line of coke and a 20-year-old who hasn't figured out that she's about to make a huge mistake, skipping out on college and coming to this week-long party.
Yeah, just check on Daphne every so often. I'm serious, we need to pretend like we are doing our jobs to justify our wages. I'm gonna go lie down. Pablo waved at me while he was getting dragged by the neck by, like he said, a 20-year-old girl prone to bad mistakes and Latin men. I started shambling down to the deck below, trying to find my cabin. I think I was the only one in the entire ship that actually occupied just his cabin and alone. Most of the other passengers, including our client, the divorced 30-year-old Daphne, doubled up with a partner to keep warm from the cold ocean breeze. My door is already open, thankfully, because I don't think I could have managed the door handle right about now. I was able to close it, and even going from the door to the bed was a challenge. I landed flat on my ass and jingled the ice in my bourbon and took one last swig of the watered-down booze. I fell back onto my pillow and I heard one last boom from the bass on the top of the deck party, and I was out. How quickly it can turn from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. I know what you may be thinking. Truth is, I drink all day. Thing is, I woke up and something was weird. I looked down and saw that my gun was still in its holster. I realized that it wasn't something that I wasn't seeing. It was something that I wasn't hearing. The music wasn't coming from the top deck anymore. Around this time, there should still be a raging party going on. My first priority was to find Daphne. I walked over to my sink in my bathroom, splashing water on my face and waking myself up a little bit more. How quickly priorities changed at the sound of a loud crash. It sounded like the wood being splintered. I think that it was the very doors from the other cabins. I drew my gun before I knew it was in my hands. I very quietly and very slowly opened my cabin door and peeked around the corner. It looked like a Latin man dressed in green forest camouflage. Lovely. A drunk and a pirate is going to make an excellent title for my report to corporate about this, not to mention any news outlets that may pick it up. If there was one pirate crashing at the doors, it meant more behind him, and it definitely meant more on deck. The pirate kicked in the door and I was able to look past him, and he walked into my room. There were more pirates. They weren't packing anything large, but I was willing to bet the tiny little larger than pistol guns were automatics. That was definitely going to turn this fun little booze cruise into a full-on Caribbean Sea incursion. I've had some bad hangovers in my cop days. Hell, I've had them in my retirement days. And in my subsequent rehire as a private security days, but this one was sizing up to be one hell of a pill to take. I started to hug the wall and walk outside of my room. The ocean gangsters beyond the corridor seemed to trust their friends to find someone like me than to actually care whether or not someone was sneaking up on them. I paused for a second, thinking one of them was about to turn in my direction and see a mid-40s rent-a-gun, but he turned his head away from me. I took this opportunity to look down at my hands and make sure I had my gun in my hand. I couldn't tell if it was the nerves, the hangover, or what was left of the booze coursing through my liver, but I couldn't feel it in my hands. I thought I was fairly in the clear when I saw the pirates move on to the next room and close most of the doors behind them. It wasn't until one raiding my room comes out with a brand new Rolex in his hand that I remembered how bad my decision-making skills were. Without thinking, I fired a single round into his head. It gave me the rest of the time to duck into one of the open cabins that had been raided already. The rest of the crew rushed back into the room following the sound of the gunshot. They were quick in tow. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were amateurs. They were already taking a lot of time to move up and cover ground. With the knowledge that they were more heavily armed in greater numbers and were now looking for me, I thought that I at least had that going for me. I waited what seemed like forever, and if these hoods knew what they were doing, it really was forever. When one walked past the door with his arm extending a nice little Uzi, I leveled my own gun at his head and fired. A total spray of bullets zipped through the walls and doors. The Captain Jack Sparrow wannabes were spraying so high that I was able to maintain a kneeling stance. I waited till the only thing I heard was the ringing in my ears and their guns being reloaded. I switched my Glock 18 over to fully automatic and sprayed from one side to the next. I don't think they anticipated me shooting back with an automatic of my own. They mostly stood there and looked at me, narrowly getting closer to them. The shots only got through about half of them before the magazine ran empty. What I did get either died quickly or were soon going to be on their way out. I underestimated how inexperienced this crowd was. They saw their bodies go flat and they ducked and ran. I'm sure some didn't finish reloading on their way through the door to the next room. Satisfied with my small win, I took the calm to reload and walked back to my cabin. I took a pill of Oxy and poured a shot of whiskey down after it straight from the bottle. I slowly used my newfound shot of confidence to follow the pirates into the room in which they had fled. I was expecting to find a wall of muzzles pointed right at me and was going to have to perform an acrobatic stunt that would make my former gym coach sing my praises, but I didn't see anybody in the room. It was open, and beyond that would be a locker room and showers. I didn't think they would be in there because there's no cover to speak of in a firefight, but who knows? Maybe they thought, what the hell, we'll go for it again and give him another advantage. I wouldn't complain about that. I was just trying to think as best I could in my drunken state of mind. It was a good thing I was thinking, because there wasn't anybody in the locker rooms either. Past that was the front of the yacht. It had a small lip with stairs on either side leading up to the main deck. I figured I could get a much better idea of the situation once I made it there. A pirate dashed past the wall. He must have been scouting me. He looked sickly thin and was wrapped in what looked like gray clothing. I looked both ways to both staircases, but he was out of sight. I followed the staircase up to the main deck where the party, at one point, was raging hard. The first thing I noticed was the fresh stain of blood on the wooden floor. There wasn't a lot of it, and there wasn't any bodies. That made me hopeful. It was a little weird that the pirates had come and gone. I imagined they were further in the ship and holding the crew and trust fund drug addicts as hostages. My only hope was that Daphne wasn't the one who had lost the blood, or worse, had already been thrown overboard. Pablo had to be somewhere. I wanted to find him first. I looked all over the top deck where the bridge was. No bodies and no blood. I looked at the security monitors and didn't see anybody on the main deck or the lower deck. The underdeck didn't have any cameras, which is the only place left that Pablo, Daphne, the hostages, and the pirates could be. The tapes had been stripped and broken all over the floor, but there were a few of them left in the recorders. I hit reverse, and I really didn't get a good look at the pirates. Some of them were in full view, but the others seemed really odd. They were gray and looked sick. They were thin and looked almost vile. I couldn't really see them that well, and when I had looked through as much of the tapes as I could, I started to head down onto the underdeck to see if there was anyone I could actually find on this seemingly dead ship. I backtracked my steps till I was walking over the dead bodies of the pirates I killed before. I tried to find a few extra bullets amongst the corpses when I heard a clanging of metal down the hall. I tried following the noise when I had stopped by stepping my loafer into a puddle. I looked down and found a pool of blood, large enough for a dead body to leak out, but no bodies, no drag marks, and definitely no gun. I guess my aim wasn't that good. Drinking can do that to you, so I'm told. I followed down the hall and it led me down onto the underdeck and into the engine room. They were still humming, so I'm inclined to believe that I was able to stop the pirates from sabotaging it. Another clang from underneath the engine's metal floor. I followed the clanging, and it led farther and farther to the hatch underneath the floorboard. I lifted the panel and was met with a 1911 pointed at my face. Thankfully, Pablo was right behind it.
Man, I thought you were dead. Where the hell have you been?
Dead to the world is all I was. Look, I was passed out drunk from breakfast. You guys okay?
Most of us, yeah, we are. We've been hiding out in here for hours. Apparently there's a small old 1980s era radio. We can pick up everything in the Gulf of Mexico, but no one seems to be able to pick up on us.
Okay, that's not a great sign. I made it up from the bridge. If we go now, we may not run into any more pirates. I haven't seen any to and from. Maybe the ones you saw have left or something.
What pirates? What are you talking about?
The pirates, Pablo.
What damn pirates? We haven't been hiding from pirates, they say? Haven't you seen them?
Seen what? Just then I heard a loud clang of metal coming from behind. I turned and saw the most alien-like creature that I'd ever seen. It was humanoid, but it was on its hands too, and it had no mouth or eyes. It was devoid of all facial features. It had rough gray skin. It leapt off its legs and jumped at me. I dove into the panel and Pablo closed it behind me. We both littered the floor with bullets. The light leaked through the bullet holes. We couldn't hear anything, and we waited for the ringing in our ears to stop. What in the love of Holy Mary was that?
Well, it wasn't a pirate, that's for sure.
Yeah, no shit.
Man, your drunk ass hasn't been having to deal with these things.
What are they?
I don't know. Could be some kind of sea monster.
I doubt it. No gills or scales, and it didn't look wet.
Come on, man, sober up. I was joking.
Fuck you. I'm lucid, I said as I popped another 2-oxy. There was no way I was dealing with these things with a clear mind. We need to find a way to the radio and signal for help. Those things, we can't fight them alone.
Bryant, shouldn't we stay here? We've been safe under the deck.
No, that radio can't make a call worth a damn. We have to get to the one that's on the bridge. If we don't get to that radio, there's no way we're getting out of here with a paycheck, much less our lives. By the way, where's Daphne?
I don't know, S.A. I haven't been able to find her for hours.
Let's just try and keep an eye out for her. I wouldn't mind wasting a bonus on booze and blow for protecting our client from aliens. Pablo and I retraced our way back to the main deck. making a slight pit stop at our cabin for another shot of bourbon each and a quick line of blow to make sure that our motor functions wouldn't be impaired from the sauce. After the pit stop, we were on our way to the main deck, but stopped dead once we heard what was overpowering the sound of the waves of the ocean. We listened to and we heard whispers. There are far too many to distinguish what they were saying, but they were very clearly coming from up the stairs leading to the main deck. Pablo and I peeked over the stairs, guns drawn, ready to fire when we saw them. The aliens, but they looked worse. They were sick with boils, bloating, and clearly having trouble breathing. Their mouths, flesh, and appendages were badly shaped. It was like they had leprosy. It was at that moment I heard sniffling noises and looked over at Pablo. He was taking an extra line of blow off of his knuckles. The aliens started rumbling and making weird noises. I looked up and the aliens started getting worse. Their skin got worse, and it looked like they were about to puke. They looked like us doing drugs was getting them sick. Then after they looked like they were done with their convulsions, they looked over at me and Pablo. We didn't have to think about running when those things ran after us. We shot as best we could to hit one hoping it would kill it, but expecting the bullets just to slow them down. At the base of the stairs, Pablo got tackled by 3 of them, and despite the sick and feeble look of these things, it didn't deter their strength or speed. As soon as they had Pablo grounded and he emptied an entire mag into the creature's head, I saw it sink its teeth into Pablo's neck. I realized we couldn't fight these things, so I did only what I thought was necessary. I snorted a little bit of blow in my pocket and watched these things convulse and seemingly get sicker. As they rattled and shook, I ran to the bridge with them on my tail not far behind. The creature seemed to have left. I unlocked the door and followed the sounds, hopefully trying to find something about them. It was hard to track them, but they seemed to be going to the front cabins where Daphne had a lookout point. It was the only place I hadn't looked for. I heard a crash and followed the creatures into it. Daphne kept swallowing pills as the creatures got closer, and they only seemed to get sicker and more bloated from her behavior. It didn't work. The creatures devoured her, and they didn't pay me any attention. I was about to make one last-ditch effort to defend my client, despite the fact that she was obviously dead. The last thing I heard was the helicopters from the Coast Guard, and the creatures jumped through the glass and the walls and dived into the sea. The security company I was working for fired me, but the lawyer that had power of attorney over Daphne's estate paid me a large sum of money to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He didn't want me to talk about the boat or the mission to protect Daphne, or even that I knew her. Apparently the yacht was her husband's, and the lawyer was trying to cover up her drug and sex-crazed ways. The money was enough to retire, and I didn't want to ever talk about it. I gave up drinking and drugs, but I never will forget those creatures. The first weekend after the event, I was at a bar about to drink myself into a coma. I saw the pale, faceless aliens behind me from the mirror in the glass. I put the shot down my throat and already saw it begin to get sick. I walked out of the bar and never looked back. The one thing I did figure out was the whispering. I heard it at the bar when I saw that thing. Alien, demon, I don't care. I recognized the whispering as soon as I heard it at the bar. It was my ex-wives. The whispering was them pleading me to stop drinking and using drugs. I had finally heard them, and I don't need answers, and maybe you shouldn't look for them either.
All right, Agent. Your next case file can be found here. For all further cases, you can always check back here at Corporate Horror. And of course, if any other information or research is needed, you can always check back at the previous case file here. Most of it's redacted. Is it really taking you this long to read? Okay, look, if you're not going to take the file, I really need to put this back into the archives.